Every day, the choices we make create our imprint, the mark we leave through our life and on the world. I'm Natalie Walton, and this podcast is for you if you want to make better decisions in your daily life, from how you create and run your home to building a meaningful business and life that you love. If you're interested in living more intentionally and responsibly, come join me and leading creatives, entrepreneurs, and experts every week. Together, let's create an imprint worth leaving. Before we start today's episode, I want to share with you something exciting that I've been working on. As you know, I'm a big believer in making our homes the best that they can be, whatever stage we're at on our journey. How we do this is central to my books, This Is Home, The Art of Simple Living, and Still the Slow Home. And so I've turned this 10 steps on how to make a home from my first book into an online workbook that you can apply to your own home. So if you'd really like to create a place that you can love today, then go to nataliewalton.com to receive this free workbook. I hope that you find it helpful and it sets you on the path to creating a home that you truly love. Just go to nataliewalton.com to download the free workbook. Okay, back to today's episode. Hi, Ameé. It's so nice to see you. I was just trying to work out when was the last time that we were actually in contact because I'm really bad with dates. And so obviously we're now in a new year. So it wasn't last year, but the year before, which I think makes it 2019.
Yeah.
But yeah, and obviously it feels like the world obviously has changed so significantly since we met you. You had just moved to, or recently moved to East Hampton from living in Brooklyn. And and like I said, life has changed significantly. But I guess I want to talk to you a little bit about your creative journey and, you know, how you got to the point where you're at now. I'm a huge fan of your work, both your architecture work and also your furniture design and just everything that you do. I just love how you kind of show up, your Instagram feed, like everything. It's just so thoughtful and considered and simple and calm. And I just love it. So I just thought it'd be interesting because people will know you through my books, which is because your Brooklyn loft is in This Is Home, and your current home is in Still, and they can kind of read about your home journey, but we haven't really spoken about your kind of creative journey. So I thought that's what we could do today.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, yes, let's start at the beginning. And I guess the other thing I should just say for everyone to know is that I have met your parents and your sister. Chris and I actually photographed your parents' home, which you designed. And your sister was living downstairs at the time in a kind of like an apartment underneath the house. And so I actually got to sort of see your work in real life before I met you, and you, like I said, your sister, she's got this business with her husband, Mr. and Mrs. White, which is furniture design. But your parents aren't creative though, are you? So where did this creativity come from? Well, they're not creative in the sense of they don't have creative roles
profession.
as such.
I mean, my mom, though, had amazing personal style and a great eye, like especially for the home, and dad as well. And they, going back to my childhood, so like born in Sydney, Australia, in the Northern Beaches, and we moved, I think it was about 8 times in a matter of like 4 or 5 years, different rental houses and stuff. And so they would always do up these houses. And after, a certain amount of time, the owners would be like, oh, it looks amazing. Like now I can get more rent for it. And so they had a knack for definitely renovating and making home beautiful, and big on creating atmospheres and making it homely. So I think they were creative in that sense. And they entertained a lot and stuff like that. And I think also they just encourage creativity. So, I mean, my earliest memory was when they've bought their first home in Narrabeen on Clark Street, and it was like this beautiful quintessential Australian house, tin roof and big wraparound veranda. And Dad came home with a box of paper from the office. It was like one of those the paper that had the perforated edges that you had to like tear off, back in those days. And that made me like the happiest little girl ever. Me and a box of paper. It's just dream come true. I would just sit on that veranda and just draw it to my heart's content. So it was encouraged for sure growing up. So yeah.
And so then what about then you're kind of then going through, say, school, and you're getting into those later years. Did you have an inkling then that you wanted to do architecture, or did that form later?
It formed later. I always loved art school, classes at school. But we actually, so I moved to New York with my family when I was 5. And they decided to go to fly to California and then drive across America, which was just like huge, thing with 3 young kids and stuff. And such strong memories, I think, of just on this journey, on this road trip. I remember the Grand Canyon and going to Native American reservations and just motels and just this crazy journey. And then we ended up in Long Island, New York, and found a home and stuff. And at school, it was just something I loved to do. But I think growing up, then I got to probably my teenage years, a pivotal moment for me was I interned for an interior architect in Manhattan when I was 13 or 14. And I was thinking about it recently. It's just such kind of a pivotal moment for me. From that time, I just knew this is what I wanted to do. So it was kind of an amazing experience. I lived in the city with a family friend, and I would go to work with her every day and experience the city as, a teenager. It was really amazing experience. So
I can imagine that would have a huge impact. And that you obviously must have felt enough confidence in yourself to be able to do that, because sometimes those teenage years can be awkward years. But I guess kudos to you that you were sort of able to kind of see it through.
Yeah, I definitely was. I feel like I was more of an introvert. I kind of, liked art because it did kind of take me away from situations that I didn't feel comfortable in. It really gave me a huge confidence going and doing that. At first I was sort of just sorting the sample libraries and stuff like that. And then they were like, oh, choose this swatch or, draw this chair and put together this, and then like go and pick up this, these artworks at the framers. So I was just out on the street on my own carrying these huge artworks and just loving every minute. I felt I was really, it kind of brought out this independence in me that I really, I was just in my element for sure. And watching I was just fascinated by like these amazing women. This is the 90s, in Manhattan, and they're like wearing the big shoulder pad like suits and stuff, and just so strong and independent on their way, busy doing things. And I was in awe. So I think it was a huge moment for me.
I can see that. And so when so then you studied back in Australia at the University of New South Wales, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And were your family back living in Australia at that point?
Yeah, so we all moved
Yeah.
back when I was like 15, did my final years of high school, and yeah, it was kind of one track mind to, you know, get into architecture and study. There was a moment where I was looking at going to art school, and I didn't get in. I, like, you know, did all these big drawings and had them professionally photographed and stuff. And yeah, I think it was just something that I wanted to explore, but I still knew that architecture as a profession, as a career, to have that as a degree was, yeah, something that I really wanted to do. So I went to UNSW and loved it. Like I loved the courses. I loved the people that I met. You know, any opportunity to do kind of like courses that were outside of the university were something that I would just jump at. So I went to Broken Hill and did a class out there, and to Darwin, where I saw some like amazing architecture that really, I think, impacted me, you know, by like Tropo architects and stuff, which was very regionally responsive architecture. And just this sense of design for the climate and the natural landscape, sense of place and all that really resonated with me. So I think that kind of set me on a bit of a tangent to explore that kind of architecture during my studies. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you about like your own personal style. As I said, I've been to your family home, your parents'
Yeah.
home, and I agree, like, you know, both your parents have got a great natural sense of style.
Yeah.
So it's not hard to see, you know, where you get it from. But
Yeah.
I guess when you were studying architecture, did you have a sense of your own personal style then? Or did you rebel against your parents and their style? You know, because obviously they've sort of got a very simple style, which is what
Sure.
you've got now. But did
Yeah.
you go through a stage where you were more into, I guess, ornamentation or, you know, more busy kind of
I mean, I would
style or
always
anything
say
like
that
that?
I never really liked, you know, putting things in sort of style classifications and that sort of thing. I was never really, for me, it was always about like materiality and um, proportion and space and light. And I know it sounds kind of like rudimentary, but like it, I was never really drawn to any kind of like classical or Art Deco or any kind of stylistic things. I think it was more about, you know, sort of structure or materiality. Yeah, in what I was wanting to explore, and I think that's what led me to then, you know, discover like Glenn Murcutt and Peter Stuttery, who I ended up working for as well. It was all so unique and detail driven, and nothing was like selected out of catalogs or anything like that. It was all felt very custom and handmade and detailed. Yeah. So
And obviously there's a very huge technical aspect to architecture.
yeah.
It's So is that part of your sort of brain, I guess? You know, like, do you have a very technical brain as well as having this artistic side? Because architecture is one of those fields that really does bring these two elements together, and you've got to be very strong in both, don't you?
Yeah, I think I definitely had a technical brain, but I wouldn't say I was, you know, when it came to kind of the physics, the engineering, or the, you know, I was really not interested in the whole like services and, you know, designing, you know, sort of the air conditioning ducts and the plumbing stacks and all that kind of side of it. I really had to just like get through. It was tough, you know, because that I was more interested in the design side of things for sure. So that kind of was pretty tough at one point. If we skip ahead, when I ended up moving back to New York and working for a really big firm in the city, and thinking that I wanted this experience of, you know, working for a big architecture firm, it was just really, yeah, eye-opening in terms of like having to learn these crazy programs and very technical and hardly any design side to it at all. So I definitely learnt that was not not me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I
Mm.
did want to go back and just touch on, though, your time working with Peter Stutchbury
Yeah.
and what you kind of learnt from working within his studio, and, how that informed your own, you know, work practice, or, what are some of the big things that you learnt from that period?
Definitely an appreciation for the process of through the whole process, really, from the client to designing to the site to detailing. You're involved in every aspect of this building, and it really is bringing this almost like sculpture to life. It was really, really fascinating and a huge education for me in just how things are made, put together, and understanding different trades and materials, and really just pushing the boundaries, I think, of what's possible and how we live, and not to just accept the norms. He would challenge everything. It was really tough, but it was good. It was really good, like training ground for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and because some people who listen to this podcast are, there's an international audience, and
Mm,
some people might not be aware of his kind of work, but he's definitely one of the most respected architects within Australia, and I
yeah.
encourage people to look up his work. We'll put a link in the show notes to his site. Although I always feel like his website doesn't actually represent
Not at
a huge
all.
selection of
Yeah.
his work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's done so much. It's huge. Um, And I will say also, just another great experience was before I worked for Peter Stutchbury, I worked for across the road. I worked for a single operating architect. So it was just him and me, and his name was Paul Johnson, and uh, he was incredible. I mean, he was still doing everything hand drafted, and just such a great teacher and encourager. And so, but yeah, working there, I would always see the Stutchbury crew like having lunches, like across from the office, and Friday lunches, and I had my my eye set on working there, and he knew them, and eventually I got a job there. But actually, I helped build Paul Johnson's house. Like I actually sort of physically did some work and on that house, and that was a great experience too. Again, just seeing how a building comes together, like just digging the like plumbing lines and all that. Yeah, it was huge education, early days for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then after you worked for Stutchbury, is that when you went back to the US?
Yeah, so Glenn, my husband, got offered a job in a photography studio in New York, and yeah, so we're like, okay, let's go. It was really kind of hard leaving Stutch's office. He was super encouraging though. I remember telling him being really nervous, and I kind of said to him, I was like, oh, I might do like shoe design or something. um, just and he was just like, yeah, go for it. He's like, cut your hair short, dude, go crazy. I was like, okay, cool. I didn't cut my hair short, obviously, but yeah, that was
Or
just
design shoes?
or design shoes. Although I did have like an interview with Rag and Bone, and they were doing shoes at the time, and they were like, "You don't have any shoe experience or like degree or anything in that." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's just it's architecture for your feet. Like, what's the what's the big deal?" Um, so yeah, I was pretty like sort of just going for it. But yeah, it got to a point where it's like, well, I need a job. So ended up falling back on architecture, obviously.
And is that when you worked for the big firm in
Yeah.
New
Hmm.
York? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and what point did you then start to go out on your own, or were you doing side projects along during that time?
So I worked for that big company for actually 6 weeks.
Ah,
um, it was a short time. It was a crazy experience, but definitely for me, it was just quite soul destroying, to be honest. And it was really tough time because I had to like get a visa to get this job, and and everything. And yeah, so I remember calling my parents and just being like, I can't do this. It's just not me, and they're just like, it's okay, like just, follow your heart. And so I found another job for a small firm, and it was great. Did amazing projects there. So I was there for like, I think about 3 years. And then at that point, Glenn and I wanted to start a family. So I fell pregnant with Navy, and I think I was about 6 months pregnant with him when I just decided to leave and do my own work on the side whilst being pregnant. And I got my first project for an Aussie girl, actually. And that first job was out east, where we are now, in a town called Ameé Allsop. So that kind of launched me to do my own work, which was really fun.
And how did you kind of get that job? Like, did you know her socially? Is that how it kind of
No,
came
I didn't.
about?
I think she was recommended. I was recommended to her through Rachel Hudson, who I worked with at Stutch's office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
always nice if you recommended, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
How it works.
Was that the was it Red Hill? Something
Yeah,
like
Red
that?
Dirt
Was it that one?
Road. Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a beautiful project.
Yeah.
And so can you maybe just share a little bit about the process on that? Like what did you do? Because I know we've sort of spoken that obviously there can be blurring lines between some elements of interior design and obviously architecture. I know it's a very different practice, but so what were you involved with that particular project?
Everything, actually. I mean, it was a good kind of starting point, because it wasn't a full ground up build or anything like I'd done such as it was a renovation. But it was great because we gutted it completely and touched everything, moved things around. We could really play with the spaces and added skylights and windows, and everything was new. So did, kitchens and bathrooms and finishes. And then, through the whole process, we were always talking about furniture and lighting fixtures and everything. So I really enjoyed that too, because I think that in the past there was a bit of a disconnect between doing architecture and interior design, and architects kind of had a bit of a, kind of, stigma, between the two. And I really wanted to try and do it all so it would feel, it would marry together. And so, yeah, so it was very quick, actually, because we designed it in a couple of months and got permits, and then started construction, and would take Navy to the construction sites and in the snow, like wrapped on me. And it was such a wild experience, but I loved it. I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do at that point.
And what were some of the big lessons that you learned? I feel like every project that you do, you kind of learn some big lessons, or it informs like the direction you go in terms of, your aesthetic or what you appreciate about spaces or how you design them. Can you share maybe some of the things that you learned on that project?
Yeah, I mean, that one, I feel like we really, we had great kind of communication and felt like we were just a team doing it together. And I feel like that was a great experience. It's not always like that, with clients. And the builder was really on board. So it was just, it was great to experience something that kind of ran fairly smoothly. There were still things that came up that you're always having to problem solve, it's kind of inevitable. You're like pulling a building apart and things get uncovered. And, I just had to be brave and be honest about, okay, this is a situation, this is going to cost more, or, why don't we change this? And so, it was just, I learned to kind of find my voice and my confidence in just communicating everything. Whereas in the past, working for another firm, you kind of, you're unsure about how much you can actually kind of communicate to the clients, and you're trying to please them and kind of make everything perfect, but it's not always perfect. And so I learned to kind of just communicate everything. And I think people are understanding, when things come up, then if you just keep the lines of communication open. So that was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then when we last met, you had sort of segued into doing some furniture design.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come about?
I mean, I'd always kind of designed pieces, I think, for spaces. I did this video editing company in Soho. I did their offices, and they were quite creative, and I did these big stone kind of sort of reception desks that were like slotted together. And so I loved kind of trying to do my own pieces for spaces when it worked, because I loved working with makers. I mean, that's something that I, going to the construction site and just seeing how things come together, and, different trades and different materials. That's like, what I'm all about. And for furniture, I think it was fun because it was something that you can design quite quickly, and you can kind of, you can see it come to life really quickly. So I think the first collection I did, though, was when we moved out east, and I met this awesome girl, Stephanie, who was doing an interior store, and she was super encouraging of it. And so we did that first collection and kind of just went from there. So bit by bit, and kind of doing more and more. But obviously having kids and family, like, changes everything. So I'm kind of taking it slow right now, but loving it. So
yeah. Are you still doing any architecture work at the moment?
No, I'm not taking on any architecture projects. Just focusing on the furniture and my little ones, and then doing bits and pieces of art as well, which I think for me, I realize I have to stay creative, like doing something or making something. It's kind of keeps me sane. So I'm working on I loved like metal castings, and so I found this foundry that's actually run by a woman, and they're doing a few sand castings of aluminium right now. So it's really fun, just like finding a trade or a craft, and then like figuring out what we can make with that. That's kind of like what drives me right now. It's sort of seeing something come to life, quite quickly. It's really fun.
Yeah. And I do think that when I mean, I hear this a lot from people, that when people have children and they're in those early years, sometimes you adapt your creative practice to kind of have something that can easily slot in between sleep times, or there are those easy things, rather than having the stress of taking on things where you're kind of in over your head and you're sort of trying to juggle too much, and nothing then gets your attention. So it sounds like perhaps that's your season right now, of sort of working with things that are sort of more manageable in that sense.
Definitely.
Of being a mother as well.
I think I had to just come to a point where I actually accept and I love the title of mother, and I think in some ways it feels like I've pressed pause on being, designer and stuff right now, but there's so much still just ideas and things happening during that time, and I feel like, really just starting again in an interesting way, and I'm really excited about kind of other projects that might come up in the future, but just really relishing this time. And just really, I've learned a lot from the projects I've done. Like, everything has been such an eye-opener and just a learning process, and just taking my time right now. figure out next steps.
The other thing that I'm really curious to find out about is last time we met, you had just had Finn, who was about 6 weeks old at the time, and you hadn't been living in your home for very long, and you'd sort of made some very basic changes. But how's the house going? I wish that I could get a tour. Maybe I can another time.
Yeah, no, I loved I love you like coming to shoot our houses. I mean, it's such well, this house and then the loft. It's just such a great memento, because it does kind of change. You know, like I'm always constantly like moving things and stuff. I'm dying to do like a renovation. That's definitely something we're planning towards and excited about in the future. But yeah, really just moving things around all the time, add new, lighting and stuff like that, but nothing major yet.
I completely get that. It's so hard, I think, when that is your work and you want to, and you can see what needs to be done and you want to do it, but you have to wait for the right time. And I think it sort of makes you appreciate it all the more.
Yeah, no, because I know that the process, like you say, I think I want to wait until I know I can kind of do everything, because I keep thinking, oh, I'll just do the kitchen, but then that's going to touch this and that's going to make me want to do that. And so I didn't want to just do it in pieces. And yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you some other questions. And I looked back because I thought, I'm sure I'd interviewed you for Daily Imprint a long time ago, and I had. But I'm going to ask you the questions again because I'll be curious to see, and we might put a link on the show notes so people can see your previous answers. I don't know if you've reread them or not, but I'll be curious to see, like how your answers are perhaps a little bit different now, and how you've evolved in your journey. So yeah, maybe we can get into that. And the first question is always the hardest, but you're practiced with this one. So which 5 words best describe you?
I hate this kind of question because it forces you to talk about yourself, which I don't like doing. But I would say curious, passionate, but inwardly, thoughtful, nurturing, which is what motherhood has kind of changed in me, I think, and hopeful. Is that 5?
Yep, that's 5. I was counting. And what's the best life or career lesson you've learnt?
Oh, so many. I think that in architecture, it kind of felt a bit like, medical kind of profession, if you will, like in a way, because it kind of felt like everyone always looked to you to have all the answers and to know everything. And I realized that's just not possible. And so I think I learned just kind of to question things, and it's okay to ask questions, I think was a big one. And, I always kind of felt like the youngest, I was female, there's just a lot of kind of stressful situations where, you were looked to. And so I kind of had to gain that sort of confidence in those situations. But yeah, I think just learning to ask questions and it's okay was a big one. And not to strive for perfection, but beauty, I think, is a big one. And that's something that a amazing structural engineer, Professor Max Irvine at Peter Suchry's office, he was an artist as well, and he was so creative, and he'd always tell me, like, stop trying to be so perfect. Like, it's okay. So they're the career ones for sure.
I love that. That's such a beautiful idea to not strike, because I am a recovering perfectionist, and it still kind of peeks its head out on time to time, and I kind of catch myself now more, but I definitely have that tendency. And I love that idea of striving for beauty, not for perfection, because obviously beauty is imperfect, but it's still beautiful.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. I love there's so even something that's imperfect is beautiful. Like it's really freeing
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
it's lovely.
Yeah.
What's your proudest career achievement?
I feel like I haven't probably had it yet. I don't know. I feel like I haven't done anything that's crazy, like notable in a way, but I um I think like just a small thing was, when I did this design for a theater in Chelsea, and it was for the foyer because it got completely flooded out in Storm Sandy. And so we did this really fun fit out that it clad it all in metal and everything like that, and had a big opening. And my parents were at the opening, and yeah, it was a really proud moment because it was something that I really worked on myself, and they were there to sort of see it and everything. So I think that was a big one.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I think
Small
it,
but big.
yeah, but sometimes, we can be proud of the way that we handle something. It doesn't have to be like an
Yeah,
accolade, but I think it can
sure.
be something that we know that we put in our best effort and we
Yeah.
gave it everything, or we dealt with it with integrity or whatever it is. So or
Yeah.
so yeah, I think we can be proud of different things within our kind of life and career. And again, that's something else that I'm kind of learning along my little
Yeah.
journey. But
Yeah.
and what's
Great.
been your best decision?
Um, I think I might have said this in the interview years and years ago, but definitely it still remains the same, is that marrying Glenn, my husband, um, was the best decision because I think it's just been the best journey with him. Like he makes everything better and fun and joyful, and he just inspires me. I just love doing life together, and I think that's just so important, to find that and to just have that person, who's alongside you to like, because he knows the things that you struggle at and that are challenging and that you overcome, and um, yeah. So I think yeah, he's the one.
Yeah, I can understand that. He
Yeah.
was a lot of fun that day when we met him at your
Hmm.
house. So yeah, I can definitely see that in him. Um,
Yeah.
who inspires you?
Um, so obviously Glenn, he's just yeah. I, I can keep talking about him. He's just a super talented photographer, and he just has actually great design sense too. He's so particular about things. We have dreams of like having classic cars, and we're into really into cycling right now. um, and just traveling together and going cycling, and it's just funny how like things do surprise you, what kind of comes up in life that you kind of get into and can just be really exciting and inspiring. And that's something we're excited about for the future, I think, when the kids grow older as well and whatever. But I think there's so many people, like obviously my family and my sister, who Sasha, who you mentioned, owns a furniture company. She also came through stage 4 cancer a couple of years ago, and just massive, inspiration, because she's just such a warrior, like a quiet warrior. And my aunt, I feel like I'm naming all like my family, but they really are. She's Annette Kelsey. She's a artist and a poet, and she writes the most amazing poetry.
Yeah, of course, I've met her too. See, I know all your
Yeah,
family.
yeah, exactly. It's part of the family.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, she's amazing. But okay, so in a design world sense, I've been reading a lot about Charlotte Perriand, who was an architect and furniture designer, and she was a mother as well. And so I think I'm drawn to stories and people that you kind of find similarities in, or just resonate with. And yeah, so she's amazing. And who else? Eileen Gray as well. Artists like Eva Hesse and Georgia O'Keeffe. A lot of women right now because women are amazing.
Yeah, I get that.
So,
I
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
What are you passionate about?
Passionate about design and making and materials. I always have lots of materials lying around, things I find. Just nature and seasons and traveling, good food, cycling, family, lots of things. I think there's so much to enjoy, in life.
What dream do you still want to fulfill?
Obviously, I really want to renovate this house room right now, and then also build hopefully like a studio, garage where we can get our classic car in there as well, a vintage car eventually, which we don't have. And then that feels kind of like a big dream right now, but I think I'd like to kind of push myself, and I keep thinking of, I think when the kids are a bit older, I really want to do a project that is architecture, is kind of a space and kind of a place to go to that's kind of different, that shows like a different way of living, and is just, detailed really beautifully, and, maybe people can go and experience it, or maybe it's could become like an artist in residency type thing. So I don't know, but I think I definitely still want to do architecture, and I'm not sure what that looks like in the future, but there's a lot of ideas. There's always ideas floating around. Yeah.
That's good. And what are you reading right now? Are you reading any books right now, other than to your 7-year-old and your 2-year-old, almost 2-year-old?
Yeah. No, I don't read like a huge amount of like novels or books and stuff. I love biographies. So I'm actually reading, I guess it's more like a memoir called Then Again by Diane Keating. And it's really beautiful. I actually started reading it and I was like, oh, I think Mum would love this. And so I sent her a copy. And so kind of like reading it together, which is really nice, because it's kind of, it's like a memoir for her mum. And yeah, lots of design books. I have a book about Annie and Joseph Albers, which is a husband and wife, designers, artists. Just lots of design books and biographies, I think.
Yeah, interesting. You'll have to send me links to some of those. And do you listen to podcasts? Are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
A few. Recently I listened to Athena Calderon. She has a podcast called More Than One Thing, which is really great. And I think I'm resonating with that a lot right now, because I've really it feels like I've moved away from architecture and kind of doing more, I guess you could say, like cross-disciplinary things, art and design or whatever. So that, the whole thing is that, we're more than one thing, and it's okay to not just have one title. And so that's been really, really encouraging. Yeah. So I like that podcast.
Yeah. I've listened to a few of those episodes. They're good. And I've got one more question of this series, and then there's another question that I haven't asked yet, which I do want to ask you about. So what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
so much. But I think to stress less and not to worry so much, because I'm a bit of a worrier. I've gone through a few, um, anxiety attacks. Being an introvert, I, was always a little nervous in situations, and just trying not to care too much what people think, and don't compare yourself with your situation. It's your journey and your story, I think. And yeah, just don't take anything for granted. Just enjoy life and be brave, I think. That's what I would tell her.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I also wanted to just sort of ask you about and touch on is, as I mentioned earlier on, I'm always, love the simplicity of the spaces that you create, and it shows up in the furniture that you designed, and even, as I mentioned, like your Instagram feed, it's very thoughtful and considered. And I wanted to ask you, when so many people really struggle with, say, clutter or things, having stuff within their homes and sort of letting go of things, and obviously you've moved quite a bit as well, which I sometimes think
Mhm.
helps, because you have to,
Yeah,
you don't want to be kind of
go
carting
through it all.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
So is that something that's, do you think, innate within you, this sort of yearning for simplicity and the way that you embrace it, or is that something that you've worked through? And what is the thought process that you go through when you are kind of going through your collections and deciding what to keep and what to sort of let go of? Can you share a little bit of your insights and thoughts?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love objects. Like, I've always loved objects, and so they're always like special things that I like to keep, and but there's just stuff that you accumulate, and it's kind of frustrating at times when you go, why did I why did I get this, or what's this? And um yeah, so I think it's good and healthy to kind of constantly be editing and decluttering and going through. um we recently just did that through our whole like studio space, moved it around, and by moving things around, you have to pick it up and put it somewhere. So I think it's important to look at it and go, do I really want this? Does it kind of, bring me joy or whatever, I think is what some people say. But dad was he's big on chucking things. So I definitely kind of was raised like that. Um, I think even goes back another generation to his mom. There's like a story about her saying to him when he's like a little boy, like, get up, get out of bed so I can make your bed. She liked things neat and tidy. So um, yeah, it's important to make sure you have things around you that you love, and to constantly edit, I think, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I find that too as well, that idea of, like what you said, that to actually touch the object. I think that so often we
Hmm.
can live with things and we actually stop noticing what's around us.
Yeah.
And when you actually kind of, like you say, you move things around, or you touch the object, and you kind of realize, like, is this actually that important to me? Like, do I still need to be
Hmm.
holding on to this? And
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess then the other side of that coin is, well, is um, then it kind of can make you more mindful about then not consuming or not buying those things again, or sort of trying to stop yourself before there's perhaps like an
Yeah.
impulse purchase, or whatever it might
Oh,
be.
totally. I mean, I think that kind of reminds me, something else I would tell my younger self is to, like, yeah, not be wasteful, because I think when I started earning money and stuff, I was, you kind of get excited about buying things. I loved clothes and stuff, and and then now I feel like I've got such a strict wardrobe. I'm like got a uniform, and I really analyze everything I buy, before I buy it, and stuff like that. So it's good to be mindful of that for sure, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. It's been so nice to see
Yeah,
your face again, and to
you too.
chat, and yeah, I hope that 2021 is a much better year for the world, and certainly for
Yeah.
America and the East Coast where you're on. and that one day I can visit you again and you'll have that car, you'll the studio.
You're welcome anytime. Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're welcome. So thanks so much for your time, and we'll leave it at that. All of the links and info you need to access for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast and the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.